Bismillah, the next section is about the description of wudu. صفة الوضوء ويسن أن ينوي عند أول مسنون وجد قبل واجب فينوي ثم يسمي ثم يغسل كفيه ثلاثا ثم يتمضمض ثم يستنشق بيمينه ويستنثر بيساره ثلاثا ثم يغسل وجهه من منبت شعر الرأس المعتاد مع من حدر من اللحيين والذقن طولا وما بين الأذنين أرضا وما فيه من شعر خفيف وظاهر الكثيف ويخلل باطنه. Here, Imam al-Buhuti rahimahullah ta'ala says it is recommended to make an intention at the time of the first recommended act, which is washing the hands 3 times. That's the first act of wudu, and it is a recommended act. And so it's recommended to make the intention here before an obligation, okay, which is the mention of Allah's name. So you could wash your hands technically as a recommended act without having made the intention. And then you make the intention before the first obligation. So it's obviously recommended to make the intention before you wash your hands 3 times. But it's an obligation to do so before the tasmiyah, which is the first obligation of wudu. This is like, the case for one who desires to wash their hands before the tasmiyah, for whatever reason that may be. However, if one wants to make wudu in a manner which fulfills all recommendations and requirements, they should proceed in the following manner, as described by Imam al-Buhuti rahimahullah. An intention is made, and the intention is as previously described in great detail. Then, facing the Qibla, utter Bismillah. That's the tasmiyah. Both hands are then washed, beginning with the right 3 times. Even if the hands are clean, they're still washed. And then the left. Then, preferably before washing the face, the siwak is made. Which basically here is insinuating that you could wash the face, and then you could wash the mouth and the nose. But preferably you begin first with the mouth, and that is, as recommended, begun first with the siwak. The siwak is made or used, and then the mouth is washed using the right hand, followed by washing the nose with the right hand. And this is 3 times each, meaning 3 times for the mouth, 3 times for the nose, the water of which is exhaled from the nose with the left hand. So you scoop the water into the mouth and the nose with the right hand, and you exhale the water from the nose with the left hand. This is based on numerous hadith. This can be done with 3 handfuls of water. Both the mouth and the nose are rinsed together with each handful. So basically you take a handful and you use that handful to put water in the mouth and sniff some what's remaining into the nose. And then that's done 3 times. So the mouth and the nose are washed 3 times each with only 3 handfuls of water. And this is the preferred method. It has also been narrated that 6 handfuls can be used. 3 handfuls for the mouth, and then 3 separate handfuls for the nose. So if you were to see this or that, they're both perfectly fine. It's not an issue of this is right and this is wrong. It's an issue of, in our madhab, this is preferred over the other. And so in the event that you see someone doing that which you don't do, it's not about reprimanding or rebuking them. That would be a breach in protocol when it comes to enjoining the good and forbidding the evil. So I'm not talking about something sinful here. We're talking simply about what is preferred versus what is lesser in permissibility, or I should say in the description of their wudu. Essentially you're fulfilling an obligation here. So there's a better way to fulfill that obligation We're not talking about you're doing something sinful here or an innovation. It's very important because if you aren't aware of the different opinions, substantiated opinions, then you may be committing a blunder by trying to enforce your view or your personal practice. You only know one particular way of doing it. By enforcing that on somebody else could be a terrible blunder. After that, he says, and mubalagha, by the way, is preferred here. It's before washing the face. We're talking about mubalagha is preferred when washing the mouth and the nose. This is preferred except for one who is fasting. Mubalagha for washing the mouth and the nose. Mubalagha is like exaggeration. To exaggerate in washing the mouth, to exaggerate in washing the nose. When it comes to washing the mouth, that means to swish the water around so that it comes in contact with all areas in the mouth. Mubalagha with the nose washing is to sniff water into the nose such that it reaches the back of the nose. This is recommended unless you're fasting. If you're fasting, it's not recommended to go to that extent, but to meet the minimum requirement, which would be simply to swish water in the mouth enough that it reaches at least part of the mouth, and then sniff water into just the entrance of the nose without it reaching the back. The one fasting, obviously, it's very possible that they could ingest the water in this process of mubalagha. Mubalagha when it comes to wiping the other limbs, washing the limbs, I should say, is recommended in all cases for all people, fasting or not, and that is when the water poured over the limbs is massaged or rubbed onto the limbs. The minimum requirement would be simply to pour water over that obligated limb. Then after that, the face is washed by taking water in both hands or taking water in the right hand and then cupping it with the left hand, and then washing the entire face. The area of the face is vertically from the normal hairline down to the cheeks and the chin. All this area vertically. Horizontally, it's from ear to ear. We're talking about the normal hairline in the event that you have no hair. Either it's been shaved off or you have you've gone bald or partially bald. Right? You could have a hairline that has receded. You still have a hairline, but it's receded. Your normal hairline is where you're going to start. That receded hairline, the exposed skin, is part of the head that has to be wiped. And this is including any skin which is left exposed under sparse hair and or the surface of dense hair. Now I'm going to use my beard as an example here, just to help you better understand this. Because my beard has both it has both dense areas and sparse areas. So a sparse area would be like here on this side of my face. You can see the skin is exposed under the hair. So what would you do here? You would have to wash both the skin as well as the hair. Water would have to come in contact with that skin underneath. Okay? It's on this side, oddly enough. That's how it is. Dense part would be here, for example. You cannot see my chin. And so I'm only obliged to wipe the surface of the hair with the water, is to wash the surface of the hair with the water. Now, if your face is like mine, where you have parts that are dense and parts that are sparse, then you have to treat each part as it is. So it's not one or the other, it's as the hair is on the face. This includes not only the beard, but other facial hair has to be done in the same way, as well as facial hair that extends beyond those borders of the face as defined. So a longer beard, all of that has to be washed because it's considered a part of what you face people with. This is not like the head, longer hair, right? The hair that extends beyond the hairline, whether it's the front or the back or the sides, is not part of, it's not considered in the Arabic language, it's not considered a part of the hair. It's not considered a part of the head, excuse me. It's just hair that extended beyond. So that's not the case with long hair. So you don't have to wipe over your long hair. We're simply talking about facial hair. This is done 3 times. The first wash in these cases is obligatory, and the following 2 are recommended. Okay? he says, ثم يديه مع مرفقيه ثلاثا ويعفى عن يسير وسخ تحت ظفر ثم يمسح رأسه ثم يمسح أذنيه مرة ثم يغسل رجليه مع كعبيه ثلاثا ثم يقول رافعا بصره للسماء أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله ويغسل أقطع باقي فرضه ويباح تنشيف ومعين ومن وضئ بإذنه ونواه صح. Here wraps up this section, description of wudu. He says, then both hands, including all of the fingernails, regardless their length, and any additional digits. Like if you have an extra finger, instead of 5, you have 6 or 7. You know, that happens as a deformity. Up and to, including the elbow, as previously described and substantiated with evidence, are washed 3 times. Here we understand during wudu a minimum amount of grime under the nails, in the nose, in the hair, even if it prevents the water from reaching the surface, is overlooked. A minimum amount of grime, so like a little dirt or something, a little grit, something's got under there. Even if it prevents the water from reaching, we know that that's one of the conditions, is that water has to reach the skin, has to reach the surface. But now we've made an exception, that is if it's a meager amount, a small amount. And the reason for that is because a small amount of grime and dirt, etc., is commonplace. It's commonplace now as it was during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, meaning this was normal, a normal occurrence. Unlike somebody having a large amount of something on their skin or in their hair. It was commonplace to have these, like a little bit of waskh, filth or dirt or something, not impurity, dirt or something. It's commonplace. And so basically what's understood is because the Prophet ﷺ did not address what was commonplace, it's not obligatory. If it was obligatory, because it was commonplace and happened regularly, the Prophet ﷺ would have been obliged to address it, because it was not permitted for him to delay conveying the message beyond its need. Because that's not the case. We don't have anything reported that he talked about or addressed the issues of minor, commonplace issues of that nature, nails, being a little bit of dirt under the nails, etc. On the skin, maybe, you know, you have like a speck of paint or a little bit of something in the hair, then those things are overlooked. Then with new water, the entire top of the head, on top of the hair, if present, is wiped once. This includes the skin just above the ears. So basically with new water, and what that means is instead of taking the remaining water that's still on your hands after washing, you know, the hands to the elbows, your hands are still wet, then you don't just go straight to wiping over the head, but you re-wet the hands. And you wipe over the entirety of the head, the top of the head, and the process is done one time. And basically, it's preferred with both moist hands to wipe from the front hairline, where the hairline would normally be in the event that it's receded or you've gone bald, to the neck, to the back of the neck, which is like the nape of the neck, which is at the end of the hairline here, and then to come back with that. So basically, like with your wetted hands, you're going to wipe over the head down to the neck, and you're going to return, and that is considered one wiping. It's not sufficient in the wiping process to just try and get the scalp wet if you have hair. So like you're concerned about your hairstyle. It's not something that I'm worried about myself. But I know there are people that are concerned, whether they're male or female. It's just been done up, it's just been styled, it's just been gelled, it's just been dried, it's just been whatever the case may be. It's not sufficient to try and like avoid getting that hair wet, and so you kind of try and stick your hands under the hair to work the water in to touch the scalp. That's not sufficient. You have to wipe on top of the hair. The top layer of the hair has to be wiped over. And then, so here to address the issue of, all right, so look, like, I'll give you an example here, some practical procedure here is that typically, like especially for men, and I know some women this is the case for them, they have long hair, they typically what they do is they brush it back. It kind of keeps it out of their face. And so to wipe in that direction is not going to cause a mess. Okay, so if you're worried that if you wipe one direction that way and then the return wipe is going to dishevel your hair and it's gonna create trouble for you, then you can wipe in the one direction and that's fine. The second return wipe is foregone. It doesn't have to be done. And in general, wiping the head, so long as wiping of sorts was done and it encompassed the head, then it is sufficient. Doesn't matter how it's done. And the reason that I mention that, and this is mentioned in the books of Hanabila, the practical application of that is hairstyle again. I mean, this goes to show you the practicality and the consideration given for personal grooming. And the realities of that is like, look, you may potentially be wiping your head 5 times a day or more for wudu. So let's say, for example, your hairstyle is not straight back. You're not going for the slick back look, but you've got bangs. And then you got hair that goes back. And so to wipe the bangs this way would mean that now the bangs have to be readjusted, the front style. So what you could do is start there and wipe forward so that you got the front part of your head with a wiping motion, and then wipe the back part so that you're kind of wiping in the direction of your hair. And you can do that this way, that way, or whatever way may be, upside, downwards, backwards, whatever, so long as you have wiped the head in its entirety on top of the hair. That would suffice. After that, let's move on from that. Hopefully that's clear. This is then followed by the ears. As we said, the ears are part of the head, which are also wiped once, and it's preferred to insert the pointer fingers in the ears and then rub the back of the ears with the thumbs to get the back part, and then to wipe the front part with the fingers. Right, you wipe the inner ear with the pointer finger, and it's not required that you wipe under the earlobes. Like you get in the crevices. It's not required. The folds in the ear, these are the earlobes. You have to wipe that part. But the folds of the ear, it's not required. Much like it's not required for you to get the scalp of your head when you have hair. Right, the scalp is naturally covered by the hair. You're only obliged to wipe on top of the hair. So here you're only obliged to get what's apparent from the ear, wiping the ear, the back and the front without having to get into the crevices of these folds on the earlobe. After that, the feet are then washed by pouring water with the right hand and washing with the left hand 3 times up to and including the ankles. Okay, so you're going to begin, obviously we're talking about this shortly, but the right foot first and the left. You're going to pour the water with the right. If you're using the faucet, then maybe you're turning the faucet on with the right and then washing with the left hand. 3 times each. Then I bear witness that there's no deity worthy of worship except Allah, la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. Right, we say that. Wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu, while we're looking up to the heavens. That's what we say at the completion of the wudu. The Imam mentions a couple of unique scenarios. One of those is one whose hand or foot has been severed. They must wash the remaining obligatory portion. Basically, that means if your hand, for example, half of it was severed, like your fingers were cut off and you still had the palm portion, then you would have to wash the palm portion. If your toes were cut off or half your foot was missing, you would have to wash the remaining foot part that was still there. Or, for example, if your arm was cut to the joint, the elbow, and the elbow was still there, that joint was still intact, you would have to wash the elbow, that joint, because remember, that's a part of the portion that must be washed. If, however, it was cut up here, at the upper arm, where all of that was removed, there'd be nothing to wash. Like if the ankle was still intact and the foot was severed, you had the ankle, you would have to wash that joint there. But if your foot was cut off and it was like somewhere in the shin area, the calf, and there was no foot, no ankle, then obviously you're not gonna like wipe over the stub that would be there. There's nothing left of the obligatory area to wipe over. He says it is permissible for the one making wudu to dry their limbs off. This is based on a hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ made wudu and then turned his cloak over, the one that he was wearing, turned it over to wipe his face, to dry it off. Basically using the inside of that, he flipped it over and he dried off his face. It's also permissible, that hadith is found in Sunan ibn Majah, it's also permissible to have an assistant, one that would bring the water for you, as well as perhaps pour it for you. Pour it over your limbs. You may be massaging it or not. They're just pouring it over there. Both of these things are preferred that you do not do them. Without a need, they shouldn't be done, because there is a natural level of effort that is exerted in these processes. And with that effort, you are rewarded. So removing that effort basically removes a portion of that reward. And this was also what Imam Ahmed said. He says, I do not prefer that anyone assist me with wudu, because this is what our great leader, Sayyiduna Umar ibn al-Khattab, said. Lastly, he says, whoever's wudu, this also includes ghusl or tayammum, is performed by someone else, be they Muslim or not, with their permission and them having made an intention. Basically, they make the intention themselves while the other person is performing the wudu for them, meaning they are pouring the water over and wiping it. They have to have their permission, and they have to have made the intention themselves. That will be valid. As opposed to somebody doing it while you didn't give them permission, they're doing it forcefully, or you didn't intend it. They just came and poured the water over your body and rinsed your mouth, etc., to go through the motion of wudu. You didn't intend it, and you didn't give them permission. Either or, it will not be valid without those two requisites. The next section here is talking about recommended acts of wudu.